On July 26, 2022, the internet did something strange. It mourned a man who was still alive to see it. That morning, a statement went out from Tony Dow's own team. Wally Cleaver, television's original steady, dependable older brother, had died, it said. Obituaries went live. Fans posted their favorite memories in the past tense. Newsrooms ran his life story as history. A few hours later, his family had to walk it back. He wasn't gone. He was in hospice care at his home in the hills of Topanga Canyon, in what his son would later describe as his final hours. But he was still there. He would die for real the next morning. But that one unbearable day in between, when the world grieved a man who hadn't left yet, says something true about who Tony Dow actually was. A far more complicated, resilient, and interesting person than Wally Cleaver ever got to be. Here's that story. Before he was Wally, Anthony Lee Dow was born in Hollywood in 1945, though nothing about his childhood pointed toward a career in front of a camera. His mother had worked as a stunt woman in westerns. His father was a contractor who built homes for people in the industry, without ever really being part of it. Tony's own ambitions as a kid ran toward the pool. He trained as a competitive swimmer and won a Junior Olympics diving title. Acting wasn't the plan. He'd done a little stage work and 2 pilots that went nowhere when, almost on a whim, he walked into an open casting call. He walked out with the role of Wally Cleaver, the clean-cut, endlessly reasonable older brother on a new family sitcom called Leave It to Beaver. The show wasn't even a big ratings hit during its original run from 1957 to 1963. It became something bigger than that afterward, a rerun institution so durable it outlasted almost every other family sitcom of its era. And the accidental actor who played its steadiest character became one of the most recognizable faces of American television. Life after the Cleaver house. Here's what most fans never clocked. Tony Dow's most interesting years happened after Leave It to Beaver ended. He kept working through the 60s and 70s, guest spots on Adam, 12, The Mod Squad, Emergency, Knight Rider, without ever chasing another role that size. In between, he stepped away from acting entirely to serve in the California Army National Guard during the Vietnam War era, working as a photographer attached to the 40th Armored Division. He studied journalism, worked construction, and generally seemed less interested in staying famous than in staying useful. In 1977, he leaned all the way into his old image, spoofing Wally Cleaver in the raunchy sketch comedy film The Kentucky Fried Movie. Proof he could laugh at the role that made him instead of hiding from it. When Leave It to Beaver came back for a reunion movie and a follow-up series in the mid-1980s, Tony didn't just put the sweater back on. He wrote an episode. Then he found an entirely new chapter, directing. His first credit came in 1989 on an episode of The New Lassie, and from there, he built a genuinely substantial career behind the camera, directing episodes of Harry and the Hendersons, Coach, Babylon 5, and Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, while also serving as Babylon 5's visual effects supervisor. Most people who grew up watching Wally Cleaver had no idea the man playing him would go on to spend 2 decades as a working television director. The battle he talked about before anyone else would. Tony's resume looked charmed. His life wasn't. In his 20s, he began struggling with depression, undiagnosed by his own account, for nearly 2 decades. At a time when almost no public figure discussed mental health openly, he did. In 1998, he starred in a self-help video called Beating the Blues, walking viewers through his own experience and urging them to get help. 5 years before that, he'd appeared as an honorary speaker at a national conference on depression. Speaking to the Baltimore Sun that year, he acknowledged the irony of it himself. The actor best known for playing television's most stable kid had spent years quietly convinced he was anything but. It's a detail that rarely makes the highlight reel. It probably should. 2 marriages, 1 lasting partnership. Tony married Carol Marlowe in 1969. Their son, Christopher, was born in 1973. The marriage ended in 1980, the same year Tony met the woman who became the defining relationship of his life. Her name was Lauren Shulkin, an advertising professional working in Kansas City, where Tony had come through on a stage production. She cast him in a local commercial. The two hit it off, and by June of 1980, they were married in a small ceremony in Laguna Beach. They stayed married for 42 years, until his death. Lauren became a stepmother to Christopher and built her own career as a mosaic artist. By some accounts, the two even collaborated directly, Tony helping build structural foundations for some of her pieces, the pair working side by side on mixed media work. People who knew them both tended to say the same thing. Theirs was one of the rare, famous adjacent marriages that got quieter, not louder, the longer it lasted. The sculptor nobody saw coming. By the 2000s, Tony had reinvented himself again, this time as a bronze sculptor, working out the hills of Topanga Canyon. He carved his early pieces from burlwood he found near his home, then cast them in bronze using the centuries-old lost wax method. Each design limited to an edition of 9. In December 2008, one of those pieces, a bronze figure of a woman holding a shield, titled Unarmed Warrior, was selected for exhibition at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris, part of a juried show with roots tracing back to Auguste Rodin. Wally Cleaver, in other words, ended up with a piece in the Louvre. He kept directing, kept sculpting, kept his family close, and largely kept his health struggles private, even as they grew more serious. July 2022. In May of that year, Tony was diagnosed with liver cancer, a recurrence, not a first fight. He and Lauren shared the news publicly, along with updates on his immunotherapy, and thanked fans for their support. He sounded, in his own posts, cautiously hopeful. By late July, he'd entered hospice care home, and on the morning of the 26th, in the middle of an unbearable week, his management team posted the news fans had been dreading. Tony had passed away. It wasn't true yet. Later that same day, his family confirmed what had actually happened. In the exhaustion of caring for a dying man, a devastated Lauren had told his team he was gone, when he was, in fact, still with them in his final hours but still breathing. The post came down. The correction went out. And for one day, the world sat with a strange discomfort of having grieved a man slightly too early. He died the next morning, July 27th, 2022, at 77 years old at home, surrounded by the people who loved him. Christopher's statement, posted to his father's page, didn't dwell on the confusion of the day before. He described his father as the best dad he could have asked for, a coach, a mentor, the best man at his own wedding, and said it brought him comfort to know Tony wasn't suffering anymore. Jerry Mathers, who played Beaver opposite Tony for 65 years of friendship, remembered him simply as one of the kindest, most humble people he'd ever known. What outlasted Wally? For over 60 years, Tony Dow was known first for 4 words: Wally Cleaver's older brother. But the fuller version of his life, the soldier, the director, the depression advocate, the sculptor with a piece in the Louvre, the husband of 42 years, was always the more interesting story. It just took one very strange day in July to send people looking for it.